Welcome to Momentous Live, episode Red Velvet Cake.
Okay.
Android 11 was Red Velvet Cake?
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah.
Sure.
You're the only one on this train. Just so we're clear.
Well, Android 12, which we will be talking about today, its codename apparently is Snow Cone. Even though they're not using the codenames publicly anymore, I thought Red Velvet Cake would have been lovely. But that's a lot of syllables for marketing.
Yeah.
So it's our Google Extravaganza. It's the day that Tasia has been waiting for. It's like Christmas in May. Are we excited or what?
It's my Christmas to me, so I expect you all to wish me a very Merry Christmas. Thank you.
Merry I.O.
Yes.
Yes!
Merry
Let's put
I.O.
on some shirts.
Yep.
So today was Google's I.O. Developer Conference. And sort of like the equivalent of Facebook's F8 or Apple's WWDC. And what's Microsoft's called? Does anyone remember?
Developers.
Exactly. So it was 2 hours. They didn't do like some of the other tech companies have been doing and kind of limiting themselves to an hour. They gave us the full Monty, a full 2 hours. And, you know, to be fair, they filled those hours with a lot of content. Some of it more interesting than others. Some of it, who knows if it'll ever see the light of day. And some of it, you know, will be coming later this year. They surprisingly no hardware announced at all. Some people thought there may be some talk of the newest Pixel phone, Pixel 6, I guess, but that's probably not going to happen till the fall at this point.
Which, if they don't call it the Sixel, is a problem. The Sixel, right? Like that's
exactly.
Come on.
So before we get into the stories, as for the live stream itself, I know a couple of us watched it here, and one of us was having trouble staying awake.
That was a sedative for me. It's, you know what I like, and that's the thing is I love the content. It's good, but I was just like, what do I need? Do you need sugar? Do you need cocaine? Like, what is it that I need to get you to be a little bit more excited about your product? And it felt like I was back in university where I'm just sitting there listening to a lecture going, okay, yeah, the AI, that's pretty cool. That's great. Come on. Like enthusiasm.
Maybe
energy.
they don't need the pomp and circumstance that certain companies think they need.
They
New,
do.
flashy, this, FOMO, no.
And they do.
It's
Like the Center Pitch Eye needs to be like running atop Google headquarters and like Mission Impossible. They do. And that's the thing. There were cool things that were announced today, right? There was like AI and translation. Like it felt like a lecture, and I wanted to be, but after I fell asleep.
Interesting. It was outdoors. They had a little platform, and they had a dozen or two people sitting in the round, socially distanced and masked.
Yep.
Even though, okay, fine. But one of the things about the energy is there was the pace. It was very deliberate. And I think everyone was coached to be speaking quite slowly. And I wonder if that's because, and I don't know if they've done this in the past or not, but the main stream that they were promoting featured an American Sign Language or ASL interpreter as well. And which is, I think, great for accessibility. It's interesting they made that the mainstream, I guess, for visibility's sake. Once you went to that YouTube stream page, you could access a link to a non-ASL version, and then you would have more of the screen dedicated to what they were showing on screen there. Now, Graham, I know that you have some experience with ASL in the past. What are your thoughts on this presentation featuring the ASL component?
Well, I mean, it's fantastic to see that accessibility. My ex-wife was, and still is, a sign language interpreter. Now, the speed of that should not be dependent on that. I mean, when we're looking at guys like Nigel Howard, who here in British Columbia has been working with John Horgan and Bonnie Henry, they can. He's actually a deaf interpreter, so he's actually working through another interpreter who's off screen. So there shouldn't be an issue there. Like if you've ever seen anyone interpret a rap concert, folks can move fast. So that
parental advisory. How do you do that in sign language?
Very efficiently, actually. The one thing that I'm finding though, and maybe this was it. Are you guys you're watching a lot of stuff on Google? Like Tasia, you're making Google videos, like YouTube videos. Is anybody watching this at regular speed anymore? I'm one and
Well,
a
when
half
it's
to 1.75 times for all
but
of the
when it's
videos that
live,
I
you don't
watch.
have much of a choice, I
Well,
guess.
and that's it though.
Right.
It's just the video is now going to be archived and then sped up, right? Because it's just like I think a lot of us are sitting there going, I don't have the time anymore. And they were
Yeah.
it felt a little it felt ponderous, but I guess it was also like they were throwing some highly technical stuff at us. They had Michael Pena come in with the quantum stuff, and it was a bit of a gag, but it was also like there were terms there that I think a lot of folks hadn't heard before. So maybe it was just we're going to take our time to make sure that you hear the word qubit, which I think was actually originally used in ancient Egypt as a measurement, but now it's a measurement of quantum computing. So
Every time they say qubit, I just think Qbert.
So, I mean, looking at that, like the interpretation is fantastic. The fascinating thing here, though, is that Google is actually working on technology to make sign language interpreters irrelevant, right? Like they actually have it's almost like an interpretation software that's measuring people's facial expressions and their movements, which are the two things that make up ASL, to essentially create that interpretation through software as opposed to through a human being. Which, for anybody who's done that work is kind of disappointing. I think that element always needs to be there, but it's going to allow more accessibility for folks going forwards. But it's just interesting to see that this juxtaposition of those two.
It's interesting, and I think good to have the option. For a lot of folks, just having the closed captioning is enough. But then at ASL, some people are more comfortable with that. So again, accessibility, as they say, helps everyone and hurts no one. So with anything, let's jump into what they actually covered, starting with Google Workspace. And I think we're going to throw to Tasia on this. Google launches Smart Canvas for more workspace collaboration. So I'm not sure how many times they've rebranded Google Workspace, because that's basically Google for Business, right? And it was there's Google Apps, and it was G Suite and Google for Business, and now it's Workspace. Am I correct in that? And now,
Kind of.
yeah, okay. And then Smart
G
Canvas.
Suite for Business. It's Google Workspace. Yeah.
So what?
But
Tell us
Smart
about
Canvas really is just their cutesy name. That's as far as I know, Workspace isn't going to be rebranded as Smart Canvas. It's just what they're using to encompass the technology and the things you can do now and will be able to do within your Google suite of apps. So basically for Google Workspace, it is all about collaboration, collaboration, collaboration. So anyone that's like me that lives in Docs or, your G Suite even. In Docs, we've always been able to, well, for quite a few years, mention people. They're taking that same theory and they're going to allow users to use that in Sheets as well, but also not just to mention people, but you'll be able to mention files and meetings. So that way, if you're working in a collaborative doc or sheet, you can hyperlink right to the meet if you're talking about something and it pertains to that meeting, or you can hyperlink right to another file that's you're going to pull from your drive, which is really, really cool because it just, of course, makes everything more collaborative in there, and you don't have to flip between tabs. The other cool thing, there's like a million things, so I'll just highlight the coolest things that they're doing. But the other cool thing is that they're going to offer like a feature that's more inclusive language recommendations. So basically think almost like a Grammarly, but it's going to be built into Google now. That's going to help you kind of write smarter and write more inclusively. So if I type mailman, it's going to suggest to me, maybe you should say mail carrier, and we'll be a little more inclusive, something like that, which I think is always a plus, because that speeds up editing to me. It's just like having Grammarly kind of, but built in, which I love because, I can just stay in my doc and keep moving, keep scripting, keep doing what I'm doing. I don't have to worry about, my language or something like that. So that's kind of a cool other thing. What's my other favorite stuff from the workspace? Let's see.
Checklists are a new thing, apparently.
Oh God, yeah. So, okay, there's a lot to cover there. Like, oh no, TJ, there's so many.
Let's make a checklist of things that we need to cover about Workspace.
I know, exactly. Okay, well, so I actually made a list of like the coolest things because checklists are going to be connected like directly to different files, and it's kind of a lot to explain, but that way you can collaboratively check things off with like your teammates. But there's going to be like table templates in docs. They're doing the ability now to work in a doc collaboratively while you're in a meet, and or start a meet or end a meet while you're in a doc. So like right now, if you're in a Google Doc, you have to like go to your other Google apps to like get to start a meet. So the theory is if we were all chatting like this on a Google Meet and we're all working on our Google Sheet of what's coming up on the next Momentous Live, we could all be just chatting live and seeing and hearing each other at the same time as we're updating that sheet, which is huge. Like that's probably one of the coolest things I think in this update, and really what they're trying to do with all of these things like checklists and this Meet collaboration. They're trying to just up their game with their competitors, like Microsoft Teams and stuff like that. Which me, I'm biased. I already think like Google's awesome and Google's the best. What? So to me, it's just like, this makes it easier. You guys, I never have to leave my Google Workspace ever again.
It does feel like they're knocking down the walls between the silos, which was the biggest problem with Google services.
Yes.
Because they felt like they were independent, which made it very easy, I think, for Google and Alphabet to kill them. When something stands alone, you can take it out behind the chemical shed and put a bullet in it. But the moment that it starts to integrate with everything else, and this is all starting to integrate with everything else, this is what we wanted from Google for a very, very long time. And they're, whether it was a deliberate intention or whether it was these teams coming to it organically, they're starting to knit together. And I was like, there you are. That's what I've wanted from you for the last decade. Here you are. So it was really exciting to see that today, because all of these little services that individually they're good, together they're great. They're exciting.
I feel the same. And the other thing too that gets me jazzed about it is we were talking about accessibility, and Meet's going to get some new accessibility features within this kind of workspace realm. I'll be curious to see. I'm sure it'll work for Meet regardless of whether you have paid Workspace or not. But they're going to have the ability to have like live captions and subtitles, which again is just accessibility within internal teams as well. It's just, to me, I'm like always game for that type of stuff, and how Google can be using their AI for good.
You've got the power. Do something good with it.
Do something.
Well, I think for Will and I, the feature that we're looking most forward to is the ability to do emoji reactions now.
Yes. That is very top of mind for many people, I am sure. I'm sure it won't be annoying to colleagues at all to just get like a laughing so hard I'm crying emoji.
Let's face it, the poop emoji is going to be the #1 used emoji.
Will's already a master of the emoji reactions in Skype, so I think there's some transferable skills there, definitely. Oh, we can't hear you, Will.
He's using Google Meet. It's fine. It's fine. Can I tell you sort of one of the interesting things is with all of the communication services that Google has put together over the course of the last 10 years, it's starting to feel like Meet is actually emerging as the winner, which is fascinating because they put so much effort into RCS and it hasn't really caught on. And it's like after Allo, after Duo, after all of these things,
Hangouts.
Meet, yeah, and Wave, and Meet is the last man standing. It's like good
on
for
them.
you. Good for you.
I love Google Meet.
I'm
it's
proud
my
of it.
go-to.
It's the scrappy little service that did.
Will, I think you're back, right?
Yes.
Hooray! Okay.
Can you hear me now?
I can indeed.
I was going
Good.
to say at my former employer, when we had all staff meetings, they would often say, "Everyone can clap now," and you just press the clap emoji button on Teams, and all these like little claps would come up.
Times.
I think I just sheared off a little bit of my soul. That's,
Truly.
I'm so sorry.
It truly is 2021.
It's like a morning cheer on your Zoom meeting. Don't do it. Don't do it.
All right. So next up, Google demos Lambda. Of course, they forgot the B in their acronym, so now the word Lambda is going to get misspelled forever now. But a next generation AI for dialogue.
I just keep on thinking lambda, lambda, lambda from Revenge of the Nerds.
Exactly. So what's Lambda about, Graham?
So obviously, this AI suite that's designed to process real world language. And I mean, that in and of itself, the semantics of real world language it's so challenging. We've seen this with Alexa, we've seen this with Siri. We're not good at it, right? When we ask real world questions, we have contextual amendments to the things that we've said. Our AI is not good at this. And so hearing this today was a combination of like incredibly exciting and terrible stagecraft. Because the conversation that was happening, I was like, you have literally the next generation of AI, and you're having the most boring conversation. Like I'm an astronomy student, and you're talking about Pluto, and Pluto is talking to you, and I'm like, shut up. It was
To their credit, we have now learned that Google are Pluto truthers, and they're referring to Pluto as a planet.
you know, and
As they should.
I'm going to give huge credit to Google for that one. Like they won a little bit, like not the cockle region, like the subcockle region of my hearts, but like yeah, I was with them on that. But it was just like, and this was sort of again going back to the whole thing for me is just like, can you be a little more excited? Like let's just give me a little more energy. Pluto was
Yeah, but it's because they have to pull the facts, right? So the whole purpose behind it is to show in this recorded demo what theoretically it could be live. The AI needs to provide users with accurate data and answers because they're only doing this in order to better their Google search functionality. So when we're searching for stuff on Google, we're going to pull more accurate answers quickly so they can understand phonetically how we ask questions to Google, so they can translate languages properly. So it's all feeding into that, which
I still hear
I
Chris
think it's
Tucker in my head
cool
from
to
the
talk
Fifth Element. Like
Pluto.
it's got no pop, it's got no fire. You know, tomorrow it's gonna be super green. It's like Google, give me some more energy. And it's like, well, because here's the thing. This is brilliant. Like it's amazing what they've done. That was a conversation, and I would presume, I would assume that Google is not going to be the company that's going to fake this. They're better than that, right? And so this was done real time processing. And it's just like,
no sizzle.
you know, here's the thing. Steak, sizzle, you give me a little more pepper. I need a little more pepper on this. It just needed a little more spice, a little more energy.
I think
And-
you needed me asking the questions.
You know what? I would actually recommend that to Google. They should, Tasia Custodi, you can invite her on.
Yes, I'm waiting.
My impression of it is that Steve Ballmer wasn't invited to this one, and this was just the developers were running the show here, and so for them,
No
this
chairs were
was super
thrown.
exciting. No chairs were thrown.
Yeah.
No developers. But I think and I totally agree with you, Gray. But I think this is where you see a difference from, say, a developers conference to what we saw recently with Apple, where it's all about it. There's steak there, but there's a lot of sizzle because there's actual products, right? Whereas this more tech demo kind of stuff.
Can I ask why we think that developers don't need a little sex in their lives?
But I like just the meat. Just give me the meat.
Absolutely, but you know, I like some sexy meat. Is what I'm saying, right? Like just give me a little bit more, right? Like, and here's the thing: this is a hearts and minds thing, right? You want to, because this is not just for developers. We were watching this. I'm not a developer, And you got to get people on board. And
But
so
I'm saying
Apple-
it's done by developers. Like it's a developer brain in the sense of I felt like this is just my impression of it, and is that it was more like the marketing team wasn't running this show. It was more like the developers were running this show.
they should bring somebody from marketing in to just look at them and go, fellas, ladies,
Fair enough.
everybody in between. Come on.
Yeah, I mean, Google is known for its engineering first culture, and that informs so much of what they do, including things like their historical user interface, which until at least the advent of material design a few years ago was sorely lacking. But their understanding of humans is another aspect to it as well. But this application of this Lambda, it's actually behind the scenes is something called MUM, which is the multitask unified model. We're going to be talking about that a little bit later as well. But the idea is that it can be simultaneously accessing various sources of information in order to be having this natural sounding conversation. So in the demonstration, one of the sample conversations was, I want to hike to Mount Fuji next fall. What should I do to prepare? That's a pretty open-ended question that, if you were to type that into a search engine nowadays, you'd get, vague answers that might point you in the right direction in terms of web pages. But the model would provide answers like, what kinds of things you would wear. And it would provide articles, videos, images, but it was giving recognizing the context of the question and the conversation. And I think one of the most fascinating applications of this, we talked about Google Duplex a couple of years ago, which is used to save consumers time when booking appointments at salons or ordering takeout or whatever. You could have technology like this on the receiving end if Google ever licensed it, so you could have conversations where there's no humans involved anymore. Yeah. It's just, you got Google Duplex talking to Lambda, and then boom, we're irrelevant.
Let's be frank.
Right?
Siri is not even in the same postal code at this point.
No.
I'm looking at WWDC and going, this is your last opportunity before I finally turn on either Google or Alexa on my Sonos system, because I've tried to love Siri so much. Mm-hmm. It feels like Stockholm Syndrome.
It's great. It's great at setting timers. What are you talking about?
Right? If I got to boil an egg, Siri's right there for me. But like the number of times that I've searched the web for this, come on, right?
I know.
Like, it is the dumbest sibling in the family. So, and Google has just literally genetically engineered Dr. Bashir from Deep Space Nine as their new AI. Like it's great. It's smart. It's articulate. And Siri is just sitting there over in the corner. I'm like, we should probably fit you for a very nice Johnny Ive designed dunce cap, because you're really not helping me at all here. I've stopped using voice search because it's so embarrassing when it goes wrong. So today I was looking at it going, I hate the fact that you're doing it really, really well, because I'm probably going to have to put some sort of Google system in my house at some point.
Well, it just feels like, what's the point sometimes with Siri, right? Like, I could just type it faster. The number of times I have to refine the search or do it again, it's like, why did I even bother with this? Why didn't I just type it in?
World domination.
I feel like Apple does everything else so well that they've actually just handicapped Siri deliberately so that they're not looking too good around everybody else. That is totally the lie that I tell myself.
It's a shame because they had such a head start in acquiring Siri from SRI, which was a military offshoot, and they kind of sat on it a little too long, and then Amazon and Google really overtook them. Now, to be fair, like Siri does most of the things that I ask it to do, and a lot of that is just like making calls for me. And if you have a lot of metadata set up properly in your contacts, does fine. Mechanical things, some basic lookups and whatnot. But I don't push it too hard. But imagine if you could. You mentioned boiling eggs. Imagine if you could boil 1,000 eggs simultaneously in a massively parallel way. Yeah. Well, Google is setting us up for just that by expanding its quantum computing ambitions with a new center. And they also have plans for a better qubit. Again, we're not going to get too far down the rabbit hole on this because we would soon enter the quantum realm, just like Gray mentioned that Michael Pena was there of Ant-Man fame and others. to help explain. He played the role of the perplexed audience in that video, and it was pretty funny, to be fair. So Google's been exploring quantum computing for a few years. They had engaged Burnaby, BC company called
D-Wave.
D-Wave.
Yeah.
I knew it started with a letter, and I'm not sure if they're still work with D-Wave or not, but they're doubling down on this quantum computing stuff. And so all the progress they're making with their artificial intelligence, once this quantum computing stuff really kicks in, it's going to increase the performance of some of their other endeavors by orders of magnitude.
And this is the fascinating thing, because when we look at quantum computing, there's a whole thing with cryptocurrency going on right now. Right, I'm wearing a SafeMoon shirt, and when you look at the equations that are involved in cryptocurrency, quantum computing just annihilates them. So this actually could be something where we're about to build an entire decentralized finance system, and we could have this thing just come in and just sweep the legs right out of it. I don't think it's going to happen, but there's always that little risk, you know. It's fascinating. Were you guys there when we saw IBM's quantum computer? It looked like a chandelier at CES. It was a couple of years ago. It looked like art, and you could hear it sing. That was the thing that got me, is when it was operating, the sound that it made. I was fascinated by this thing, because I'd never heard anything quite like it in a computer. Very, very cool stuff.
Now, if you are interested in quantum computing, because it is a very dense topic and mind expanding in a lot of ways when you start delving deep into it. But if you want a fictional entryway into it, take a look at the AMC TV series. I believe it was AMC. It came out last year, and it was called Devs. And it's about a Silicon Valley startup ostensibly working in quantum computing, and what they do with that technology to basically create a simulation of all of history and project into the future. Highly recommended. We're not doing picks of the week, but that's my pick of the week right there.
Yes.
DEVS. It's just a one season limited series. It's definitely worth a look. And Nick Offerman plays one of the protagonists in it. Awesome. So, quantum computing. Now that is going to be powering next generations of MUM. What we were talking about, the AI models that Google is going to be rolling through so many of their products, from search to lens to all the things we've been talking about so far. Another little side note: privacy is on people's mind a lot in the last little while, especially with the amount of information hoovered up by Google, by Facebook, and others. And those with advertising models really come under the microscope. So one of the things that Google took pains to do today was talk about how they are prioritizing privacy. And they've added a bunch of new privacy settings. And they are really trying to reassure people that with all this amazing technology at your fingertips, with the Google Assistant and all the questions you could ask to it, they are giving more options to consumers to help lock things down through locked folders, ways to automatically delete your data, like historical data, search history and whatnot after certain periods of time. They're continually rolling out these sorts of features. Any thoughts on privacy and Google's approach to it? I mean, any of you there?
Well, you know my thoughts.
Well, there's a quote that actually kind of, it's an older quote that maybe, does this sum up your position? Here's the reality. Most people don't care about privacy. Media elites care about it. Underemployed Eurocrats care about it. And the entire privacy industrial complex, there's an entire set of very loud voices who are constantly beating the drum and building media careers around this. That was Antonio Garcia Martinez, former Facebook exec, until recently, Apple employee turned unemployed employee. And that's what he said when he was at Facebook, which echoes some of the things that Mark Zuckerberg had been saying 10 years earlier.
94% of Facebook users have decided not to have their apps track them, right? And Google is not, they've emerged as not the villain here. They've decided not to be the bad guy. Their entire business is centered around being able to get advertising information to the right audience. And they've looked at it and they went, okay, we can track people and we can follow them around the web, or we can take a lot of the identifying factors about how they browse, and we can use AI to determine what would be a better way to talk to them. So there is privacy or there is prediction. And Google has chosen prediction. And Mark is really pissed about that. And out of the two, Google wins hands down for me. They have decided that Apple is taking the higher road. They're going to follow them down that road, and it's the smarter way to go. And today was just a validation of that, of looking at it going, we don't need to. And this is the difference between Facebook and Google. Google is smarter. They look at this and go, we can solve this problem. And Mark is freaking out and losing his shit because he can't dig into your life, and he's upset about it. And this reminds me of the 20-year-old university student that he was, because the shortest route was the easiest route, to just dig into your life and get all your data. And Google did that for a
that's
while.
how Facebook works. So
And-
to him, if he doesn't have that, he doesn't have a platform.
And the thing is, Google did it for a while, but they've looked at it and went, we can do what we need to do without doing this. And so props to them today to say, you know what, we're going to take a stand for privacy. And so this to me is the writing on the wall for Facebook. I look at this and say, your time is numbered. Users don't want you. Apple doesn't want you. Google doesn't want you. You are the weakest link. You are the one on the island with no torch. You can get out. We're done with you. Good night.
I think the
Leave
only
Instagram,
problem
we
with,
like that, but you can.
yeah, exactly. The only problem is that both Apple and Google have demonstrated beyond a shadow of a doubt that neither of them are capable of building a social network. So.
You know what? And here's the thing, they don't need to. And honestly, I don't want them to, because the idea of this monolithic entity that does control all of these things is the worst thing. We need somebody else in that space. And we do need an image-based social network. And we do need a regular social network that are not connected. The more that we consolidate these things, the worse it is. So the fact that this is going to break is great. The poodle agrees.
So some of the features that Google was talking about, being able to lock down certain folders in Google Photos so no other apps on your phone would have access to them. So more granular controls there. They're called locked folders. Enhancements to their password manager. And then, as I alluded to earlier, being able to quickly delete things from your search history, even as short as 15 minutes. So you look something up and boom, it's out of your search history, especially if you're searching questionable materials.
But it's still there.
Well, yeah, it's still
Here's the
in
thing,
their
like,
brain.
have you guys ever looked anything up on YouTube just because you hear something on Twitter, or you hear something like, you're like, I'm going to take a look, and then all of a sudden the algorithm latches onto that, and you're like, but I was just trying to get the joke that somebody told, and now you're taking me down a rabbit hole that I don't want to go down. So
And now it's Nazis all the way down.
Well, I'll give you a quick example. I've been watching this fascinating series called Narco Wars, and Googling various people like Chapo Guzman and find out a little bit more. And your browser history changes when you start doing a lot of Google searches about nefarious characters. So that would actually be a good feature for me on my phone, just to wipe that stuff out.
Incognito mode.
But
I do that
you always
too.
forget, right? It's always like 10 minutes afterwards, you're like, I didn't do the thing.
And by the way, I just want to say, if anyone's thinking they can get away with murder now by Googling, the best place to dump a body and then mapping the place by your house that you're going to dump that body, I just want you to know, even if you clear your web history, the keystrokes are still there.
Yeah.
I mean,
The FBI will figure it out.
the smartest way to do it is to
Don't do
ask
it.
Siri, because she'll have no friggin' clue.
You have no idea.
And the police will they'll be like, clearly this is not any sort of murder, because they have no idea what they're doing.
Wasn't it I think it was today, they were saying that they're trying to deal with the question that's becoming increasingly popular in the last couple of months, which is this true? Or is something true? That was one of the things that they identified. I can't remember the context, but maybe it was something to do with AI and the search functionality. But that's a question that's coming up a lot recently.
I think we've seen a lot of unwavering loyalty in the last couple of years. So the fact that people are asking, is this true, might actually be a heartening thing. The folks who weren't questioning before may be questioning now. I'm going to knock on wood on that one.
Well, as Pontius Pilate once said to a certain condemned man, what is truth?
Ooh, cut.
So
Deep cut.
leave it to the
Wow.
search engines to tell us.
Chapo Guzman and Pontius Pilate. We're bringing up all the great historical figures.
What'd you get paid for that ad? 29 pieces of silver. It's great. Don't worry about it.
So moving right along, Google announces new search, lens, and AR features. Again, powered by Mum. Mum is everywhere. I'm telling you, Mum is going to be the new Skynet, guys.
All
The-
kids know that Mum is everywhere.
Doesn't this sound like a Netflix movie? Where like I am mother, I am mum.
Yeah,
It's just
I Am Mother was great. Check it out. A small movie, but worth checking out. If you're a robot caretaker on a desolate planet. So again, Mum, that we alluded to earlier, the multitask unified model, is a follow-up to 2019's bidirectional encoder representations from Transformers, also known as BERT, which was powering a lot of search queries in Google. It was one of the major updates to the Google search engine algorithm. And what they said in this keynote today, that I found astounding, is that Mum is 1,000 times more powerful than BERT.
Ooh,
So that's like what,
Not
three,
BERT.
three orders of magnitude. So this can be interesting to see how this is going to affect the quality of search results, how it's going to affect the quality of what we do with AR, augmented reality, which Apple's been pushing hard as well. And Google is showing that, hey, we're not asleep at the switch here. We're doing the augmented reality and some pretty impressive demos that they gave. And then, of course, Google Lens, which I believe they had bought a company that had an app a number of years ago called Word Lens, where you could take your phone, launch that app, and then point the phone at some text of a different language, and it would, if you had the appropriate language packs installed, it would translate that text on the fly and replace the text in the image on your phone. So that functionality has been rolled in to Google Lens now, but now it's like, point your phone at a chair, and it's going to find that chair online for you, and just based on the object recognition and all this stuff
is a
is going to
knockoff.
get exactly. This is going to get better and faster as they integrate Mum into all of these features.
You mean I don't have to take an image and then do a Google image search just to find out where the product is online?
I love this. It does feel a little dystopian. It does feel like. Is this the beginning of the end? Because it feels like the beginning of the end. It sounds like the beginning of the end out there.
Speaking of dystopian, is that your neighborhood where we can hear the sirens from there?
They're playing my song. It's just
And it's Graham.
We actually had a fire extinguisher go off yesterday because about 6 months ago, someone set fire to the gas main of the building next to us for giggles. And so one of the residents of our building grabbed a fire extinguisher to try and put it out. The gas it's not going out. They just don't even work. So he'd pulled the pin on it, but didn't actually use it, and had put it back on the shelf. And so somebody, as they were walking through, leaned on the handle, and then this thing vomited forth all of the fire retardant material that it did, which sets off the fire alarm. And so who has to deal with that? Muggins right here.
Perfect.
So
if you only had Google Lens installed on your phone, you could just point your phone's camera at the fire extinguisher and quickly order up a new one.
I like props to Bartek. They had a new one there this morning. I just had to deal with the fire alarm twice last night. It was just not great.
So Google Lens will be able to feature, powered by Mum, will be allowing you to look up various animals, science diagrams, and more. What's that?
Have you guys used this?
I've used Lens a little bit, but not the recently enhanced
Yeah.
version.
I used
the
it
old
extensively about 3-4ish years ago when we went to Germany and Amsterdam, and 4 years ago it was flawless, right? You could point at a sign, it would read the sign for you. Just made sense. And so I'm looking at this now, going, if this is what was it? What would you say? 1,000 times?
Yes. Well, 1,000 times more powerful than BERT, which is for the search engine. So, one could extrapolate for some of the other things like Google Lens, but they didn't provide a stat for how much more powerful Google Lens will be.
Yeah, I feel disappointed that I didn't find some sort of backronym for Ernie on this, but it was a very powerful tool, right? Like, I don't know, eidetic reading, something. But anyway, it was very, very good 4 years ago. And so looking, I haven't had a whole lot of use for it in the last year. Have you guys gone anywhere? I haven't gone anywhere.
No.
No, we're not going.
I could go to TNT Supermarket and be like, that is tofu. Fantastic. But
I think they should have. I agree with you on the Ernie acronym. They should have called Marvel because they're great at coming up with nonsensical series
Acronyms.
of words, acronyms. Yeah, like strike and shield,
sword and shield.
Sword.
Yes. Aim,
Exactly.
Yep. Bless them.
Well, speaking of going nowhere, just in time for Google to update Google Maps for us, kindly.
Yes.
However, with an emphasis on walking directions. And Tasia, what have they added to walking directions on Google Maps?
Yeah, so this is kind of, I like to say, an update to their live view that, worked with some AR that they've had for, well, I have no theory of time anymore, probably at least 2 years. What is time? Pre-pandemic times, they came out with live view, which was basically they were using augmented reality when you're walking through the city to see more detailed walking directions. You're traveling this way, here's this intersection coming up, you came from this direction, things like that. There's points of interest nearby, but now they've updated it to include things like details about nearby shops and restaurants that are around you. There's going to be helpful new signs at like major or busy intersections, which could help a lot. And if you're traveling, since Google will know that because they know your location based on like where your home is, or if you're away, they will kind of tell you where you are in relation to your hotel. So you'd always know, like if you're in a new city and I don't know where the heck I am now, it's going to be able to tell you on the map, like, oh, you're here and your hotel is right, like, bing, you're right here and you're northwest of the hotel by 3 blocks or whatever the specifics are going to be. But that's in addition to some already really good live view features that they have, which do also include some accessibility things and some sound haptics and things like that for people that may need it. Another cool thing with it is you'll be able to spot like busy areas at a glance. This is not a live view thing. This is just another update on maps. So when you open up your Google Maps, now it'll tell you right in the map view, like say you want to go to the museum or something, you're traveling in Florence and you want to go to the museum and you want to see the Statue of David. Well, you open your map and like Google will bing, bing, bing in, I think what's going to be like yellow, it's going to highlight areas that are busy. So you kind of know, oh, it's peak time right now. Maybe I should wait till whatever time. And so that's just kind of like a really neat thing upon launching maps. Something else really interesting is they're going to start, which I don't know how I feel about this one, but they're going to start tailoring the map to you based on, so like they'll highlight places they think will be of interest to you based on the time of day and whether or not you're traveling. So it's going to use some machine learning to kind of learn like, okay, so she's away, it's morning, she just woke up, it's 8 a.m. and maybe she wants coffee. So now it's going to show me maybe more coffee shops than other things. And if you click on any of the things it shows you, it'll show you similar shops or restaurants or stores or places. And I think the last update they're doing is actually something in the routing options. And it's supposed to help you reduce like your hard braking when you're driving. So it's going to tell you like, oh, because like it already is pretty good about that right now. Like there's a slowdown coming up. It's a 5-minute slowdown in, 5 minutes or whatever. But now it's supposed to tell you a little bit in advance of that, so that, in theory, they've thought hard braking correlates to X amount of car crashes per year. So if we can try to stop the hard braking, we can theoretically stop car crashes.
Fewer fender benders, rear enders, all that sort of thing.
All that sort of thing. So those are kind of all of the updates for Google Maps in a nutshell. There's a lot.
So Russell Dicker from Google said, we think that we're going to have the ability to potentially eliminate around 100 million hard-braking events. So even if a tiny fraction of those would have resulted in a fender bender or a rear ender, you can just imagine the implications that has for lack of injuries, lack of insurance claims, and so on and so forth. So these things have real world implications, real world benefits for folks. And that, in addition to adding the extra information about crosswalks, people, especially if they're not familiar with a certain area, they gave the example of Columbus Circle in New York City, which is a pretty complicated roundabout sort of intersection. And if you're using the walking directions in Google Maps, then it can show you where the crosswalks are, and you're not just crossing at some random place. Because when people are new to an area, they're not sure exactly where they're supposed to cross. So this kind of thing could help prevent pedestrian-involved accidents as well. So,
yeah. I'm a big walker, and I have to say I feel like the walking directions have been the red-headed stepchild for years. So it feels like any additions to that, or maybe using some machine learning as well for traveling and stuff like that. Those are all great ideas.
Good stuff. So again, Google they were using the data that they had from Google Street View in addition to satellite and aerial imagery, putting it all together, maybe sprinkling a little AI on there, and I think they're rolling out to 50 cities to start with, and just going to get more and more details and enhancements to Google Maps going forward. So one of the other aspects that we can just talk about very briefly, we talked a bit about Lens and the augmented reality. The shopping is the extra little bit of stuff that the extra feature that Google talked about with Google Shopping. Now, Google has had shopping features for years and years. You may remember way back in the day, they had something called Frugal, Froogle, which I believe was a shopping comparison engine. And they've kept it around. They renamed it Google Shopping eventually. Now they have an AI-enhanced shopping graph. So, it's all about connecting you with what you're searching for, and at the best price, and helping to facilitate those searches, and eventually kind of, in some ways disintermediating some of the other middlemen in there. But they also announced a big partnership with Shopify, which represents 1.7 million merchants. So it's going to be interesting to see where that all goes. Tying in Google Lens, looking for products, taking photos of things using Google Lens, and having Google lead you exactly to what you want to buy, and maybe they'll want to take a cut at some point as well. I mean, with all these things we've been talking about, this is all to fulfill their mission that they stated right at the outset, to organize the world's information, and then, of course, present it back to you in a way that hopefully they can sell ads against.
Yeah,
you got to pay the bills somehow, right?
Yeah.
So next up, Google Photos gets some cool new features just in time for it not to be free. So
TikTok.
Google Photos has been one of the most generous in providing free storage for photos. And Tasia, you are a user of Google Photos, are you not?
Yes. Oh, yeah. I love it.
So what are they doing for us now?
I will become a paid user when they want me to in June. Yeah, I mean, bless you, Google, for allowing us to have free unlimited storage this long. But the first thing they did, you kind of touched on a bit earlier, so I won't get too much into it. It's essentially you can now store some photos in a locked folder. That means you're going to create a password protected space on your phone. So those photos will not show up when you're scrolling through them in the Photos app. They'll just be behind that password protected spot. The cooler thing, though, that I think is happening in Google Photos is that you'll be able to make animated photos from stills. So you just need like 2 photos, and I think they're calling this cinematic moments or something like that. But if you took like 2 stills, it'll stitch them together and make like a moving image from the still photos. And I think that's kind of neat because Google Photos has already been really good with, I don't know if you guys are users of it or not, but they've already been really good with, pulling up your memories or creating little, kind of the same thing like Apple does, little slideshow videos of this trip, or things like that. Or, hey, maybe you want to tag these people or share this with certain people. But this is just a really cool thing now, to stitch two photos together to be like an animated image, just to have a slight movement. Also, because people get super bored looking at photos. So, it has some movement. Now maybe people won't be as bored. Those were the coolest updates for me, though.
And it's a little easier on your phone's storage or even your cloud storage than, say, live photos, which is often on by default on people's iPhones. And I usually go and try and turn it off for them. And live photos grabs, half a second before and after you snap the photo, and it creates like a little video moment. But that can be murder on your storage. So with this, you just have two photos, and then it's kind of figuring out the rest in a kind of creepy machine learning way. And but it's kind of neat how it actually looks. But there may be a little bit of uncanny valley going on. I mean, of course, they show a sort of idealized examples, so we'll see how this actually performs in the real world. Now, one of the other features that they did mention had to do with the customization of memories, because they said that some people may have certain memories from their past that they would rather not come up as suggestions of a year ago today, 5 years ago today, 10 years ago today. With Ship of Theseus, where all our cells are replacing themselves every 7 years. We are literally not the same person 7 years later. So it might stand to reason that we might not want to see the same certain photos from 7 years ago either. So they're trying to be sensitive to the reality of the fact that we have this digital vapor trail, so to speak, of all these photos that we've been taking over the years with these cameras that are in our pockets. And unlike photo albums, where it's easy just to not have not pull them out, when it's pushing the photos into your face, sometimes it's hard to get away from certain memories that might not be terribly pleasant. So it's nice to see them adapting to the reality of people's feelings and so on. Next up, speaking of feelings, or not, Android 12. Some people have feelings about Android. I mean, I don't think any of us here are full-time Android Android users, but they mentioned a few of the updates to Android 12 coming. One of which is I would say one of the features, the banner features, is called Material U. Now, Will, this caught your eye. What do you think about? Can you tell us what Material U is?
Well, I think that's the feature that it's with this. Sorry, I must admit, I don't remember the name of it, but it's
customization feature for
the customization feature. So I think one of the interesting things that struck me here is that a lot of Chrome or OS won't always let you customize some of the colors, or they'll give you a very limited palette. I mean, we might remember, Windows 3.0 and stuff that gave you, one of, Arizona, and give you different sort of color schemes and stuff like this. This seems to give you much more customization and, allows you to personalize things. And that's a big thing with devices and technology, is being able to customize it to your own sort of sensibilities or interests. So I think that's a great feature, but at the same point, there's also the whole idea of the, closed shop that, some things like Apple in the past have been a little bit more tight about letting you, change things or hack things, because you know what, it may just be hard on your eyes. It may not give you a good experience long term, just because you want to use teal and black. That may not be optimal for reading, even though you think it's cool. So there's just some of those things that I think sometimes we also see going the other way, which is not allowing customization. So I think it's very interesting that Android is allowing that customization, and that, in some ways, I think I'm responsible enough to change my own colors. So I like that side of it. But
your colors are fine. We need to get you a new microphone. Straight up. I love you to pieces. I can't do it anymore. We're going to Best Buy, or we're going to Tom Long McQuaid. I'm buying you something more. They're killing me.
It was fine until 2 minutes ago. I'm not sure what happened. Maybe it's
I'm having problems with my AV today. I don't know what's
Okay,
going on.
Megatron, settle down.
So thanks for the primer on that, Will. So basically, Android has traditionally been more customizable than iOS, and they're taking this to the next level. I think Apple doesn't like people messing up their perfect shiny thing. Whereas
they've got the tower on the hill, right, where they decide what it is that things look like.
Exactly. But the thing is, most people are not designers. So when people have customized their their Android installations, it reminds me almost like of MySpace back in the day. Exactly. So now with Material U, at least they've made it very simple to tastefully update your Android themes, and using, of course, the Material design language, automatically pulling some complementary colors from photos that you may have as your wallpaper, and so on. And actually, the screenshots they were showing look pretty darn good.
We'll let you choose the general direction, but we'll have somebody drive you there.
Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly.
And it's important to note that right now is just customized on like Google devices, like the Pixel as an example. So it's kind of yet to be seen, like how, say, Samsung or other manufacturers, how they're going to use that their
I feel like Samsung will
devices.
get it right. I feel like, OnePlus will get it right. It's the ZTEs and the whoever else's that you're just like,
Wow.
Yeah, it's there for them to implement. We just don't know if it'll look similar, the exact same, yet to be seen. TBD.
This is where I want Google to just be autocratic and be like, okay, we're done with all of you. All of your TouchWiz and your other nonsense, we're done. You who had aspirations of being a designer, stop. Because you are terrible.
So a couple
Material U and you're all done.
So a couple of the enhancements that we're going to see in Android 12 include a privacy dashboard that, again, gives you more granular controls for the amount of information that you are sharing, including approximating your location as opposed to providing a specific location. And then they're also rolling out a digital car key, similar to what Apple announced last year, known as Car Key, that with the support of various automakers, you'll be able to eventually unlock certain vehicles with your phone that is equipped with an ultra wideband chip.
The car key that we call car key.
Car key, yes. I don't think
right now.
Bless you, Apple.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Apple is staking claim on all the generic words, right? And then everyone else has to dance around.
It's an app store. It's a car key. Oh, for crying out loud.
Exactly. Photos. It's not iBooks anymore. It's books. So there you go.
Come on, Tim.
Next up, Wear OS, back from the grave. Like, how many people do you know that wear a Google Wear OS powered smartwatch?
There was a Mel Lastman in Toronto had a furniture company called Bad Boy, and who beats Bad Boy? Nobody.
This is the famous mayor, right?
Nobody. As I don't know. I know one person who wears Android Wear. And I think it's actually because the watch is still fastened to his wrist. I don't actually think it has power. I think it's almost like a low jack. He's just...
Now, to be fair, Fitbit, whom Google acquired in the last couple of years, I know a fair number of people that have Fitbits. They're lower price. They're lower featured. They're not claiming to be a full-on smartwatch, but as basic fitness tracker, they do a lot of what a lot of people are perfectly happy with. So that was probably a smart acquisition on Google's part. Now they're using some of the brains they acquired in the Fitbit acquisition to, and also they're working with Samsung now, who have their own operating system called Tizen, and they're doing the Voltron thing, putting their brains together and relaunching Wear OS under the same name that virtually no one knows about.
I think it's just going to be known as Wear.
It's going to be Wear? Google Wear now?
Where?
I think it's just going to be Wear, but they're working on it.
So where is Wear?
The theory is, with them merging, is it's going to be easier for developers because now they're only worried about essentially like developing for one platform instead of like a million friggin' Android things going on. And It's going to be better on the user end theoretically because it's going to allow for 30% faster load times with the apps. You'll have more customizable watch interfaces. Plus, users are just going to have now more actual choices with their hardware because it's opening it up to all of the Samsung models too and stuff like that. So it's a good move on their part, and I think it is going to bring them back a little bit from the dead.
Back to Google's camera initiatives, again, powered by their relentless pursuit of machine learning and in artificial intelligence. They have a couple of interesting angles now with their Photos app. And one of them is they are vowing to improve skin tone representation. Basically, some people of color, especially the darker the skin, the harder it is for certain cameras to process images properly, get correct, white balance, color balance, all that sort of stuff, exposures. And, part of that is a function of, with the darker the skin, the harder it is to tease apart from shadows, et cetera, et cetera. But again, if you have people who are working on these algorithms that may be of a certain race or ethnicity, it may not even occur to them to look into tweaking some of these algorithms because they're not encountering those problems in their own lives. So Google, again, making another enlightened move here, is improving their algorithms to improve photo quality for people of color. I think we can agree that that's probably a good thing because it would be a little crazy making to try and take pictures of you and your friends of similar complexion. It's like these never look right.
Yeah.
So Will, you've had some experience with this. Google is trying to fix this.
Yeah, I mean, I brought this up that I actually have had some experience with this other than, partly on phones, but partly just in general with photo software and display methods. A coworker of mine that I worked with for several years was very dark skin color, like extremely dark skin color. And basically, we were doing some training and other things like that, and we just basically couldn't use photos of him either on phones or even sometimes on cameras, but especially if there were other people who were next to him who were lighter skin tones, there just wasn't that ability to differentiate easily between, someone with a darker skin color and a lighter skin color. So he got to the point where he was like, just don't take photos of me. We're going to do a training session. Why don't we just do it of Will instead of me, because we can use the photos of the video much easier, or sometimes it just won't work. So, I mean, it's kind of hard to say, no, we got to use some footage of you, or you're a better trainer, like, let's use your footage. But, that's just the reality of how some of these softwares work, or how some of these image processing works.
Yeah, yes and no, because the reality of how the software works is based on who wrote it. And Google themselves had an ethical artificial intelligence team where there was a woman named Timna Gibru, a doctor, and she focused on the fact that they had people who look like you and I writing AI, and they were not focusing on people who had different skin colors and different features. And so essentially there was bias built into the AI. So it's not just this is how AI is built. This is how AI is built by people who are building AI to address themselves and not addressing everybody else. And when Google heard from Dr. Gebru that there was inherent bias, they fired her. And this is going on right now. And it's incredibly disappointing. It's great to see that they are addressing this issue going forwards, but there is a whole boondoggle on the other side that they are accountable for. And I'm seeing this on my Twitter stream every day because the good doctor and along with this issue, because it is not going away. And it is incredibly frustrating to see them pay lip service to this right here. And meanwhile, they have not done right by Dr. Gebru on the other side. It's frustrating, at least for me.
Yeah, and I guess we we probably will never find out if there's more to the story as well, because it would seem pretty barefaced or bald-faced to just simply fire her for raising these questions. It makes you wonder if there's something else going on there or not. So is this merely lip service? Is there something that they had a genuine interest in? How enlightened are they actually? So again, if there's some sort of settlement, then we'll probably never know, because there'll be NDAs signed and all that sort of thing. But
this challenging nature of Google is because it is multifaceted. There are so many talented people there. And so the talented folks do great work. And unfortunately, I think there are some folks who are not quite as prolific or talented, who are doing the things that we find challenging, the things that I know that I find challenging. I see it, I look at it, I'm like, how did you make that decision? Looking at today, I saw a lot of really great stuff. And so that gives me hope. And so hopefully we see more of what we saw today, as opposed to what I've seen in the past. I'm excited. I'm cheering Tasia on here. Like, this is your team, and they're doing well, and I'm excited for you. And so, yeah, I feel like this might actually be a bit of a corner turn for Google.
And in this particular issue speaks to the importance of having a variety of backgrounds, whether they're cultural, ethnic, religious, or philosophical, political viewpoints when designing things for people in the real world. When you have your own little echo chambers, whatever the nature of them, sometimes you can be inadvertently cutting off a large portion of your target market, and a lot of times just not even realizing it. Speaking of things that you might not realize that could be issues, Google's added some extra functionality as well to help you identify that suspicious mole or rash using the camera app. Tasia, what's going on here? Now we've heard about Dr. Google. Is it for real now?
This is Google's new health tool, I think is what it's going to be called. They're going to start with skin conditions. Y'all, this is the hypochondriac's nightmare, okay? So I just want to put that out there. So if anybody's a hypochondriac, maybe just back away. Essentially, you'll be able to take a photo of a rash or a mole or something going on with your skin, and this Google Health tool will tell you. It'll pull from, like, it's got, I think, 288 possible things that it could be. Like, they've narrowed down like the most realistic things. You take the photo, you add it to this, you fill out a questionnaire, like a little survey. So it'll ask you things about, like, your skin tone, what you've been doing, other things that might be going on, and it's going to break it all down for you. And apparently they're accurate, like almost 90 something% of the time. I can't remember exactly.
97%.
So like there's
97%
things that it could be, and 285 of them are cancer.
Right. This is the thing.
You've got the cancer. I'm sorry.
And this happened because so it's gonna basically provide you, like, here's the caveat, a list of possible conditions that it could be. And that 97% accuracy, I believe, if I'm understanding it correctly, is one of those things on that list is accurate 97% of the time. So I don't know about how many things are going to be on the list and what that means, but the basis is good for this. The idea, Google was like, they have 10 billion searches a year about skin conditions. So they went, hey, we have a lot of data, and it's gonna use some learning in it as well. So the more people ask and upload images, and the more things are diagnosed correctly, like, that's all just going to feed into its sphere of learned skin disorders.
There's 10 billion searches, and 95% of them solved by compound W. Got it.
It's like, and then they're very clear to say, this is not a diagnosis.
It's for educational
what
purposes.
What the hell is it then?
That's right.
This is very dangerous territory.
Very dangerous. I mean, we're all Googling it anyway. Like, let's be honest. We're all Googling what does this mean? Or what does this? Or so they're kind of just saying, hey, if you're going to do it anyway, go for it.
It's fascinating because we've identified a difference between, or the gap between, like WebMD and going to see your doctor.
Oh,
Right? Like telehealth is kind of, and that's the thing. Like you joke, but I actually had like a little thing show up on my arm here. It was a mole, and it wasn't getting smaller. So I went on and did the telehealth thing. And by the time I
Yes.
got an appointment, which was a couple of days later, it was falling off. And they're like, we're gonna get you to see a dermatologist, but it's probably fine. You probably
It was a dried
Yeah.
lentil. Let's be clear.
But like looking at that and looking at the accessibility, even for remote communities,
Yes.
for people to have access to a doctor. What we're doing right now, like these tools right here, the diagnostics, being able to put your arm into a blood pressure cuff anywhere and have that readout happen somewhere.
Yep.
Like it's great that Google is doing this with optical information because they're doing a ton of stuff with image recognition, but taking all of that data and then processing it and handing it to a trained professional, not an AI, a trained professional.
Right.
I think that right now is the intermediate future of telemedicine, and I'm excited about this because I don't want to go to a clinic. Like the last year, I don't want to go to a clinic.
Yeah.
I'm not. No. I got a webcam. We're good, right? And so maybe there is an intermediate step where there is some diagnostic equipment where I can go to even my local pharmacy, and I could see a specialist. This to me is this is exciting. This is going to save lives. That's great.
Well, I do think you're right, though. I mean, the camera functionalities coupled with the questionnaire you fill out, which I assume would also ask you things about, itchiness or texture or, maybe size, because think of something, yes, like skin cancers. You go into the dermatologist's office, they have a poster that shows you what to look for, what certain things to look for. So if the AI knows that, and it can look at my mole and say, oh, the edges of that, like, hey, is it bigger than it was last month? Because those edges aren't nice, smooth edges, they're rigid or whatever. So even just little prompts like that for people that are either can't get to a doctor or are doctor adverse, don't want to, I do think there is some positive there, but also for people like me that Google everything and think I'm dying of cancer, it's probably not great for me right now.
That's the thing, is having the expertise to actually tease out the information. Like, and for example, like my brother's a doctor, and I remember talking to him a few years ago, and I was trying to explain this weird medical situation I was having, and I said, well, the big thing is I feel dizzy. And he said, don't go to a doctor and say dizzy. Be more specific, because dizzy, everything is dizzy. Every condition has dizzy associated with it. So don't start with that one. Start with an item that, why are you dizzy? You dizzy when you move? You dizzy when you turn your head? Or what does the sensation of dizzy feel like? So
isn't that a crazy challenge though? Because they don't teach us to talk to doctors.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I feel dizzy. Well, what do you feel? I don't know. I feel dizzy.
One of the biggest things I've learned, sorry, this is going on a side tangent, but I had a medical condition, as I just said. Basically, I had a bit of a spine injury and a head injury as a result. And one of the things you learn, and I think we have a pretty good medical system, but you have to be your own advocate. You have to learn how to talk to them. You have to learn when to ask questions and how to explain yourself. And that's one of the biggest challenges that none of us are taught. And so, or I don't feel I was taught, even growing up in a medical family. My father's a doctor, my dad's a doctor, my grandmother was a nurse. So I just felt like I had to learn and stand up for myself pretty quick. So this might give you ammunition to talk to a doctor. It's like, hey, I did this photo or whatever it is with Google, and it said that I could be one of these 10 things. My only concern is that you would take that as gospel without actually talking to someone who had expertise who could interpret it for you. So there's a bit of both of those things.
There's a difference between, providing diagnostic information and coming to a conclusion.
Yes.
And a lot of folks out there come to a conclusion based on WebMD and whatever else. But if I can give you more information, this is what I've observed. That's helpful.
Well, I think I might have also told the story. I forget we're how many episodes in. I can't remember if I told the story, but when I was getting diagnosed, my wife was next to me, and the doctor said the name of the condition that I had, and my wife was Googling it, and the doctor said, "Please don't Google it. Let me explain it to you first."
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
On that note,
well, this
they're right? Like there's all of that expertise, and there's all of that context, and a one-page WebMD article or a one-page "this is why this condition is killing you" is not. It's not for us, right? It's not made to. It's not made to help us. It's made to alarm us, and so yeah, trust your medical professionals. Like ask questions, absolutely, but don't try to do their job. I wouldn't want them to do my job. I've seen their handwriting. It's not good.
So tools like this, which we actually haven't said the name, it's called Derm Assist, which is the Google web app. So you don't even need a native app for your phone. Any phone that has a web browser, you can access this, Derm Assist, and others like it, like MySkin, MIISKIN, and Skin Vision, and others. It speaks to the magic that happens when you combine AI and or sometimes robotics with the human. One or the other on its own will only get you so far, but it's when you combine the strengths that you really start to gain efficiencies, whether it's for screening purposes and so on. Your computer, your AI is not going to solve your medical issues, isn't going to do a proper consultation for you, but it's going to help you through the first few steps until such point as you're able to get a professional consultation, whether it's through telemedicine or in person, if that's something that's available to you in your area and you're comfortable with, especially given that there's a pandemic. Now, if you want to just get a friend to check out your moles, there's a great new project that Google's also launching called Project Starline, which is a next-gen 3D video chat booth. Video chatting that's supposed to feel like you're there together. And from what I understand, Tasia is on board for this. Tasia, are we going to be inspecting each other's moles with this or what?
Oh my God, you guys. Okay, Gray, you have to play that video because I nearly cried when I watched it because I haven't seen my family in so long. And right now, bear with Google, there's specific booths you have to go to and sit in that have multiple cameras and sensors. And what they're doing is these cameras are tracking you and the person you're talking to in real time in order to stitch together a 3D model of you that can then be rendered in real time and displayed to the other party. You'll be able to see all of the angles. You'll be able to make eye contact, and it's going to look like that person is there. Look at this video. So here's that lady is not there. Like, it's amazing. So to me, the coolest thing about this is, yes, okay, right now it's specific technology in a specific booth in a specific place. Cool. But it's where this can go. We all know that like the biggest, coolest things in tech that have changed our lives started as these big, cumbersome things, and they're not that way anymore. Like, do y'all remember big satellite dishes? Okay, like as an example, even TVs as an example, computers, any type of technology you're thinking about, it's like storage devices, whatever it might be. This is just another. Honestly, for me, I foresee the future, and it's like this, but on our devices. And it's so badass, you guys. It's so badass. Like, you feel like you're there and you could just touch them. I miss my family.
You know what this reminded me of? I think there was some sort of generation of Star Trek where they actually had like communication to other people, and instead of a screen, it was like a circle on the ground, and the person like popped up. And was it a movie? I can't remember. Maybe Gray might be able to fill in my head. Star Trek Discovery. Yeah. Yeah.
Christopher Pike pulled it out of the Enterprise because he didn't trust it, with good reason. Anyway.
You earned your pay today, Gray. So Yeah, I mean, there's been telepresence has been around for over 10 years now, but that's been largely in corporate settings where you have pretty expensive camera arrays, large, high resolution monitors, and positioned in a way that it seems like people are sitting around the table from you, but they are, they're still 2D. So this is interesting because it's almost like they're scanning the people and then creating this like
Yes.
3D avatar of them, and it's a little strange in a way, but it's using these light field technology, kind of like we've seen with Litro cameras and such in the past. And this experiment that they're doing in just a handful of Google offices, it'll be interesting to see how much of this actually makes it into consumer applications, because and then how long is it going to take until we're all little chess pieces on a board in a spaceship?
I'm curious because it looks like it might actually be an implementation of a 19th century magic trick called Pepper's Ghost. Same thing they used to bring back Tupac Shakur. It looks like it might be that. I don't know.
Listen, we are one step.
Otherwise,
We're one
it's
step
volumetric
closer to
lighting,
teleporting.
which is, I mean, I'm right there. I haven't seen my parents in 18 months. I know I turned 40. My mom turned 70. My parents have their 50th anniversary next month. I'm really not doing well with this right now.
Yes.
So I'm. Yeah.
Gray, I nearly cried when I watched that Google video. It's been too long.
Yeah.
I was like, a 3D stranger?
Well, Google is now doing its best to ensure that you see your parents before the world ends, and they're committing to be completely running on carbon-free energy by 2030. Now, they're describing this as a moonshot, and this isn't simply carbon neutral, like buying carbon offsets and whatnot, but they want 100% of the energy being used to run all their operations, especially their data centers, to be sourced from green energy power supplies.
Love it.
That's the whole story.
Absolutely love it.
Yep.
2030, there you go. They're throwing down the gauntlet, because
By 2030.
yeah, that's their
9
moonshot. So
years.
they're not. It's not a promise. It's a moonshot. So even if they don't they miss by a couple of years, because Apple has made great hay on claiming to be so environmentally conscious, and they've done a lot of things in terms of recyclability of their products, reducing the amount of packaging, getting on to being carbon neutral throughout their whole supply chain. But this is one step beyond. Sourcing only green power sources by 2030.
Technically, I
Love
believe
it.
the human species is 1 for 1 on their moonshots, right? It was JFK who was like, "We will go to the moon before the end of the decade, not because it is easy, because it's hard." And that was the only time that was promised, and they did it. So,
And legions of New Englanders have just tuned out due to the great offense that they've just taken on your JFK impression.
well, best I can do. But they did it, right? I mean,
Well, and the Google's famous for its moonshots, and they don't all go somewhere, but you never get anywhere by not trying. So might as well give it a go. And now it's like your move, Apple.
Mm-hmm.
no.
And your
Actually,
move, every other major corporation.
Didn't Apple say that they were doing this by 2030 as well?
Well, I don't think they did. They didn't use the same language. I think it was just carbon neutrality, but this is carbon free power. So we'll have to have our crack team of researchers double fact check that. But
Will.
type. All right, so we have gone way long. There's so much wonderful stuff to talk about with Google's I/O. Even if it wasn't the most captivating keynote over the course of 2 hours, they could have tightened it a little, but there was a lot there to chew on, definitely. And so we'll have links to all the stories in the show notes that you can check out. But Teja, quelle surprise, you have one quick Google-related project for us this week?
See, it is my latest video, which is the Google Sheets tips for productivity, which now I can't wait to update after this, and we have all kinds of cool updates to do. But there's some good hidden productivity tips in there for people if they are big Sheets users. So check it out.
And sneak peek to what we might have the following week.
Dun, dun, dun. Well, coming up this week in 2 days, on Thursday, I am dropping my top 10 announcements from Google I/O. 2021.
Whoop, whoop.
So I'm going to run down my picks for the coolest / best announcements that they made today, because if you're anything like Gray, you either didn't sit through the 2 hours or you don't want to sit through the 2 hours.
I could only make an hour and a half because I had a meeting at 11:30, so I had to leave. But you know,
Yes.
I was impressed by the content. I just wasn't impressed by the presentation. I just want to grab somebody by the lapels and be like, "You guys are better than this." But you know what? What I heard actually made me really happy. So
Yay!
So before we let Tasia go to furiously work on her video, due in a couple of days, and now that his audio has recovered a bit, Will, why don't you tell us about something you got going on this week?
Sure, yeah. So a while ago, I was approached to contribute to a looper. Basically, it's this organization called Scribe Society, and they have a battle of the year. So for their battle of 2021, they have this looper, and I contributed 2 loops to it. So it was, again, I have to say, anytime anyone asks me to be part of a looper, I always find it a huge honor. So I really appreciate being part of this one. So a lot of great stuff there. Go check it out on. I don't think right now that's a web looper. So the page there is just the listing of the looper. But if you go to Table Beats app on iOS and Android, you can download it there.
Yeah, the tableist.net, they're mentioning on this website here, and there's the app. I downloaded the app as well to check out some of your beats a couple of weeks ago. Pretty cool stuff, and lots of other artists there to check out. So thanks for sharing, Will, and kudos to you for being included on that. And so that brings us to the end of Momentous Live, episode Red Velvet Cake, also known as episode 11. Thank you very kindly to Gray Williams, Tasia Custodi, and William Silver. Check us out at momentous.tv, facebook.com/momentous.tv, twitter.com/momentous.tv, instagram.com/momentous/TV. And if you want to find us on YouTube, you can find me, youtube.com/TJMJutra. Good luck spelling it. youtube.com/Tasia Custodi. You might see hopefully she's playing ball and including make a playlist for Momentous on your page too, Tasia. I did it on mine, even though you've got like how many thousands more followers than I do? 15,000 more than I do, but that's okay. Thanks, guys. Best day of the week as always. We'll see you next week.